Welcome to ICN Sunday Morning. I'm Vernon Loeb, Executive Editor. In all the noise and scandal last week surrounding the Jeffrey Epstein papers, it was easy to miss one of the most consequential actions the past 50 years affecting the environment and environmental protection. The Trump administration announced that it was eliminating the EPA's Office of Research and Development. A union official representing EPA employees called the office the heart and brain of the EPA. And a former research and development official said it took decades to build this office and it will take decades to rebuild the office. She called its elimination cruel and unconscionable. Joining me this morning to talk about this is Marianne Lavelle, our Washington bureau chief. Marianne, thanks so much for being here.
Oh, glad to be here.
So take us inside the EPA Office of Research and Development and explain to us why shutting this office down is such a devastating loss to the country.
Right. Congress gave the EPA the mission to protect health and the environment using the best available science. This was the office that found what the best available science is, the latest science, the highest quality studies, and put it all together so that the EPA could make decisions on what to regulate. And they're not going to have that independent capacity anymore.
Yeah, you wrote earlier this week about how the industry has been gunning for the Office of Research and Development for years, and in particular, a program there called the Integrated Risk Information System, IRIS, that calculates, just how harmful chemicals are to people. And it's funny that you mentioned Congress creating ORD with science in mind. When the American Chemistry Council wrote to Lee Zeldin earlier this year in January, sort of demanding the end of ORD, this is what he said about IRIS, the IRIS program, and the Office of Research and Development. EPA's IRIS program within ORD has a troubling history of being out of step with the best available science and methods, lacking transparency, and being unresponsive to peer review and stakeholder recommendations. Is that a factual statement, given what you've reported about this office and what I know about this office? That's almost Orwellian, but
Every time the EPA regulates any industry, any chemical, the first thing that the industry comes back at the agency and says they have a problem with the science. This science is not just a few people in the EPA sitting there deciding what the science is. They're taking together all of the science that's out there on ozone, on chemical compounds like PFAS, the forever chemicals. And what they're doing is listing the pluses and minuses of those studies. It's all very, very detailed. It's all very, very transparent. The problem is that the chemical industry wants more say over that development of the science. Although the chemical industry has plenty of say over the final regulations. And in the past, over years, the EPA decided to do these risk assessments this way. It is a process actually begun under President Ronald Reagan's office, who was confronting Superfund and all sorts of toxic waste problems at that time. So it has rich history, and it has worked in probably protecting a lot of lives.
yeah, in fact, it was IRIS, was it not, that really helped us understand the dangers from PFAS, the forever chemicals that are now in people's water and in all sorts of consumer products. That was
It,
Iris's work, right?
it was actually ORD, that office that uncovered the pollution that was in North Carolina, affecting 500,000 people and coming from the Comores and DuPont facilities there. Uh, ORD scientists did more than that. They developed a way to test for these very complex chemicals that have 15,000 components. They also developed ways to treat the polluted water. And so all along the way of the EPA dealing with this very difficult problem of PFAS, the scientists from ORD were involved. Of course, that's another area where the chemical industry disputed for a long time the dangers of these chemicals.
Mhm. So it's not just assessing the risk, it's figuring out how to mitigate the damage
Exactly.
once the risk is assessed. By the way, what is happening now that they've announced that they're shutting down this office where hundreds of scientists, chemists, biologists, toxicologists worked? What is happening? What do we know about what's happening to these scientists right now?
Well, there are reports today that things are in chaos at EPA. What the administrator Lee Zeldin said was that he would move some of those scientists to other offices and he would create a new, very small science office that would have nothing like the scope of responsibility that ORD has. The problem with moving the ORD scientists to these other offices is they're right under the political appointees. The whole system was designed to insulate the science from politics, and that is a big part of what's being lost.
Yeah. So let's look at what ORD and the IRIS program did under the Biden administration for the past 4 years. One of the things they did was they tightened national air pollution standards, PM 2.5, particulate matter 2.5, and they changed the standard from 12 micrograms per cubic meter to 9 micrograms. It sounds pretty wonky and arcane, but what's the significance of that? We're talking about these incredibly fine air pollutants that get deeply into people's lungs and kill thousands of people every year.
Right. And
So
they're
what's the
caught,
significance of going from 12 to 9 micrograms?
right. And also significantly, this is fine pollution that's caused by combustion, mostly
Right.
by combustion of fossil fuels, also by combustion of wood. But what ORD found, and there have been studies saying this since the 90s, but what they did was over the years through 2019, they looked at all the evidence. And what they found was extensive evidence across multiple disciplines. And we're talking medicine, toxicology, every sort of science confirmed that this kind of exposure results in cardiovascular effects and death and mortality. The Biden administration estimated that once these regs were in place, it would save 4,500 American lives per year. The health benefits would far outweigh the costs. And but the way that would happen is pollution controls, and in many cases, even cheaper, transitioning to other forms of energy besides fossil fuels. The Trump administration doesn't want anything to reduce fossil fuel use. And so this new standard was high on the hit list of the new administration.
And it's gone already, or it never went into
They're
effect?
in the process of eliminating it. They have already announced they're planning to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, IRIS assessments also led to actions on let me read these chemicals: formaldehyde as a carcinogen, ethylene oxide, hexavalent chromium and arsenic, and chloroprene. All of these are chemicals in the environment, making contact with people, neighborhoods, communities, going about their business in their daily lives. IRIS was working on all these chemicals and in fact put out new standards on all of those chemicals.
Right. The Biden administration was working on new standards based on the science that ORD had done. And these are all chemicals that are very widely used in industry. And a lot of them come up the smokestacks. One in particular, chloroprene. And Iris found that that is a carcinogen. And the plant that was producing a lot of it was in a totally majority African American community in Louisiana. And the Biden administration took action against that facility um, based on the IRIS assessment. This caused a huge backlash in industry. Uh, and the result is we no longer have that Office of Research and Development.
I think that plant in Louisiana said it was going to shut down because these new controls were so costly. I wonder if it will now reopen.
Yeah, we don't really know what will happen. I am sure that this is one of the things that the Trump administration would like to reverse. Um, but a lot of these companies take a lot of things into consideration, including the economics, not just the regulations. And if the economics don't work, that chemical manufacturer won't reopen in Louisiana.
Yeah, yeah. ORD Science, I think, was also behind new standards for power plant emissions, strict new standards for power plant emissions. What happens to those now?
Yeah, so uh, power plant emissions are not only greenhouse gas emissions, which we write about it Inside Climate News. Uh, it's a brew of different chemicals that come out of those smokestacks, mercury, air toxics, um, and the precursors to things like smog. ORD worked on all of those aspects, the very complex science of how that smokestack pollution moves across the country. And there have been many regulations were written to address all these forms of pollution, including greenhouse gas pollution under the Biden administration. All of those are now on the chopping block. Anything that restricts use of fossil fuels is getting scrutiny and being erased by the Trump administration.
Yeah, this closing of the Office of Research and Development has really been been talked about since March. I think the New York Times had a story back in March saying that this was going to happen, and it happened. At the time, we interviewed a former ORD official, and I was struck by the way she explained the work of her former colleagues. They help us evaluate risk, understand risk, and more importantly, develop technologies to help remove these things from the environment, to your point about PFAS in North Carolina, and reduce our exposure and reduce our risk. So now that we don't have an Office of Research and Development anymore, who's gonna reduce the risk of the American people?
I think we really don't know the process by which the administration is going to be making these decisions. One thing for sure
Will
is
there be do we know that there's going to be a risk assessment process?
I, I would say one
Could we
thing
live
for
without
sure.
that? I mean, I could hear some people in the Trump administration saying, you know, let's let industry do what industry is wont to do.
Every administration has had to deal with some environmental crisis that they didn't expect, whether it was the Flint, Michigan water crisis, the lead and water crisis, the Exxon Valdez crisis, the crisis of toxic waste, uncontrolled toxic waste sites in the Reagan administration.
The Palestine train fire in Ohio a couple of years ago.
Absolutely. Doesn't matter if it's a Republican or Democrat in office. These things happen given uh, the risky chemicals in our environment. And if and when that happens, this administration, even with its views against regulation, is going to face pressure to protect health and environment. That's why Congress created EPA, and the reasons for its creation are still there.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe at some future date soon, you can come back and we can talk about what's happened to the Chemical Safety Board, which is the analog agency to the NTSB that investigates transportation disasters and air crashes. The Chemical Safety Board is supposed to do the same for chemical accidents, which happen, to your point, all the time.
All the time.
And often the Chemical Safety Board just doesn't show up. But that's for another day.
Okay.
Marianne, thanks so much for joining me this morning.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, and thanks to all of you for watching, for reading, and for supporting what we do at Insect Climate News.